So I guess we could start the story for when I was just a teenager, and I mean, we had a kind of our group of friends, and we would just do our thing, and then somehow we ended up starting to go to Syracuse. And I think what comes to mind first is we went to Syracuse to play with our worship team once, and that's how the trip started there. And then our group of friends somehow became friends with Zoya's group of friends, and it went from there. But I was like 15, 16 at that time, so we were just kind of doing our thing. And I know before, as I was younger, I kind of knew what I had wanted. I knew the characteristics that I was looking for, but kind of never really acted upon them because I was just still so young. But then we started going to Syracuse, and I didn't really think much of anything until after a little while. Um, just we kind of started hanging out with certain people more and more. And then after that, it was for me, I think what moment hit me the hardest was one time we had just come back from Africa, and in 2 days we went to, there was a Syracuse like prayer in downtown. And so after all of that was over, everybody decided to go to a Starbucks that was nearby, and like a huge group of people was there. Rochester people were there, our people were there. And so we go down there and we hang out. We found a piano, we played there, we went to Starbucks, and then this whole group of people was going back to their cars because it was a few blocks from where the prayer happened. And we're walking, and then I find myself, I'm just like walking by myself. I'm like, okay, this is lame. And then I see some people walking in front of me, so like I catch up to them. And then I don't know how it happened, but it ended up that the last like part of the walk, me and Zoya were walking together. And then I don't know what we talked about. I don't know what happened there, but I remember driving home, and I was like, man, this girl, man, I don't know, something about her. And then I left a few days later, literally, I think it was 2 days later, I left to Carolina. And my cousin Miro that just got married, I remember just sitting with him, and we're just catching up each other on life because we see each other maybe like once or twice a year. And I was like, he's like, dude, what's happening? You got a girl. And I'm like, dude, there's this one girl, like, nothing's happening, but I don't know. She's blowing me away.
John and I started. They had a big conference at their church. Well, it wasn't big. It was like a Friday night. And we came with our group from Syracuse, and it was Maria and I. And I remember we were sitting there. And growing up, it was like you always envision this, your Prince Charming thing. And for me, one thing, we were sitting there. No, earlier, I was telling her, I'm like, Maria, I want someone who plays piano and who's going to sing. And then so we go to the service, and then we have like their worship team comes out. And lo and behold, there's a guy behind a piano. And the first song they start singing, he was singing solo for it. I nudge Maria, I'm like, Maria, look. But then after that, I didn't think much of anything. It was just like a moment. But then after then, we had a group in Syracuse, and we just became really good friends with this awesome group in Utica. They were like, their passion, and like they were so involved in church, and we just began like conferences, prayers, we'd start meeting up and just talking. And it was just like, remember, like they had a big influence on us. But the first time I actually talked with John, it was, like he said, we had our downtown prayer in Syracuse, and somehow ended up that we got alone and we were talking, and it was just, I guess, and that moment, I don't know, didn't really think much of it, but afterwards it was just.
So eventually, like, some time had passed, and I mean, it was probably months, maybe a year or so, and our trips to Syracuse, they became more often because they would have a prayer every third week, and we would just come with our guys, with Abby, Yula, Roma, and other guys every once in a while. And it so happened that every time we would come, after the prayer, we would have a great time, and then afterwards we would just go to like Syracuse University and just hang out down there. And it would be like month after month. And so eventually came to realize that every time I go there, like, just want like the last moments before we go home to just like talk to Zoya, just, I don't know, hang out, just do something to like, I don't know. And so I realized that like my feelings are growing for this girl, because I like I only see her like once a month, maybe sometimes more than that. And then it's just like I realized, okay, I think I have feelings like definitely for this girl. And so it was just building up for a while. And then after that, I mean, I didn't have her number or anything. And then one day, it was during the summer, and my birthday was coming up. and me and David were celebrating it together at Green Lakes. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta text Zoya because we're gonna be in Syracuse. So I gotta have her come. Like maybe something at this birthday. Like I could talk to her or something. So I decided to take her number, and I took Evie's phone and I took Zoya's number, and I'm like, I'm gonna text her. Found a time and place, and it was at work, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna text her. And so I text her, and her reply was a little surprising. And I'm like, all right, this is gonna go very well. And so I invited her to our birthday party thing at Green Lakes, and literally, like, even though it was our birthday, like the only thing that I was thinking the whole time, like we went on the little canoe thingies or whatever, the boats. We did like random stuff, but the only thing I'm thinking the whole time is like, when is Zoya coming? And Zoya was taking forever. She like only came later in the day, and it was, and I realized, okay, this has got to mean something. If the only thing that matters now is like, is this girl showing up? Then, man, something's going on. And so it went from there.
So as our trips to Utica became more frequent and the Utica group began coming to our church more often, the things like you would long for was those couple moments you had with walking alone with this special someone. And after that, so that's how it was for a while, a month, maybe a year. I was close to, and then finally, I had gotten Tony's. I had broke my phone, so I got Tony's old phone, and I was going through his contacts, and he had John's number in it. I'm like, oh my goodness! I came up with this brilliant plan that for his birthday, I was gonna send him a birthday text, and I'm like, he'll get my number that way, and it'll be perfect. But before I knew it, I was at work. It was during the summer. I was cleaning, and I remember exactly the same place where I was, the classroom I was in, and I get a text message, and he's like, it was just, I don't know, hey or something. And I guess I replied very enthusiastically because I had his number and I knew who it was. So I replied, but I acted like I didn't know who it was. I'm like, hey, who is this, you know? And so he invited us to go to Green Lakes. I remember coming home, and Tony was home, and they were working on the house. And ever since I got home at 3, and he texted me earlier in the day, he's like, whenever we're going to be there from, I don't know, it was like 12 or something. And so for the next couple hours, I was begging Tony to go to Green Lakes to take me there. And he was dragging it out so long, and I was getting so impatient. I was like, Tony, can we just go? He kept up coming with excuses, and but we finally got there. We were a little late, and I don't know. It was like there was a bunch of people there, but you still kind of had my eye on someone already. And then, yeah, that was the first time we started texting, and we kind of met up.
And so after that, I mean, it just started with kind of the pre-dating routine. We just would text all the time. I mean, for months. And it would go from just like a little bit to all the time to where it was just like all the time. And so I realized, like, man, gotta start thinking about my future. So like what I want to do with this. And I just, all that time put together, it was all leading up to, I mean, I knew like almost from the very beginning that it's like, that she's my girl, that, you know, that's the one I'm going to get married to. But it was just kind of figuring out timing because we're 18 years old, 19 years old. Life just began kind of getting on our feet. And so Zoya finished school and she left to Africa for a few months, and that was difficult because she was gone, and I really realized how much I miss her and like how much she means to be in, like, to me, and how much she needs to be in my life. And then after that, the next year started, she came back, and then just college, and then after that went to work down south for a couple months, and that was ridiculously hard. But when I went to work, that's when I realized that, okay, this year I'm proposing, and it was last year in 2014. And while I was down south, we were working in South Carolina, and so I had people that kind of gave me some good advice to help me out with, you know, with the ring and all this other stuff. And we were living with the guys, so we were kind of going through all this together, Reuven and Roma and I, and just kind of making plans. And so it went from there, and I just kind of started making a little plan of how I wanted to do this, because I knew before I went to college in the winter semester or in the spring semester that I wanted to go to Africa one more time. And I knew that I had to come back for college from strike. And so I just kind of made it a plan that when I come back, I'm going to get everything done at once. I'm going to propose, I'm going to do what I need to for college, and then go to Africa.
So after the first time he texted it, we went from there, from a couple times a week to legit every day. And it became, we texted for a long time, months, maybe a year, close to a year. And then finally we would always just hang out in groups, and then finally he asked if we could just go out, just both of us. So we went out to a lake, took a walk, and that was the summer before I just had finished high school, and I had it on my heart, and I really wanted to go to Africa. And so it was then, that year, that I left to Africa for a couple months, and I guess I knew I liked this guy, but it was just never was like something real. And so, but I guess the time away and like being in Africa, like forever away, and just not being able to talk as much, it was like became like, okay, this guy means a little more than just a friend. And so it began like so like you kind of knew vaguely that, okay, he probably is, he's the one, and we're gonna be married, but it was like a dream, a far-fetched kind of dream. And so I came back from Africa, and right away it was like that summer he left to go work down south, and him being away, it was just another whatever. I was in school, and and then you realize more and more, and it was right before I lost my train of thought. So he would leave, and he would come back for a couple weeks, and he'd leave again, and it was just like, I don't know, it was quite terrible. Like just you realized that, okay, there was definitely more than just feelings and affection for him.
So yeah, as work was winding down, and I was just figuring out what was going to happen in 2015. It was all a matter of just figuring out when I wanted to propose, like how we were going to do this. And so ordered the ring. Still, it was like the end of the summer of 2014. We worked on that. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to have a week when I'm going to be home in Utica between Texas and leaving to Africa. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to propose then. It was still a little cold, but we were praying like, God, no snow, no rain, nothing. Just let this happen. And so I had this idea, because I was at this one place in Syracuse before I had left, and it was perfect. Well, I come in November, and we go with the guys to check it out, and it practically doesn't exist. There's like a pier, and they just took it away because, yeah, it's the winter. And so I had this other idea. We planned it all out, and we're like, okay, let's do this. And so I saw Zoya once when I came back, and the next time she was in school, and I was supposed to pick her up from school. And so we go through with this plan. I had a whole bunch of people helping me out. And unfortunately, it didn't really work out. The place we chose, yeah, that didn't happen. And so we had to quickly figure out what else we were going to do. And so we moved to a different place. The guys helped me set up quick. Went and got Zoya. And I've never been so nervous in my life. And it's just like, okay, by this time you're pretty much comfortable with this person. But I was so nervous. And yeah, I just kind of, that day was like, oof. I ended up having a presentation early in the day. So I got Zoya, and it was this place by the canal. And so it was all set up. My plan was like, okay, gotta say I love you there, and at least have a piano so I could sing for her. And so I practiced this song, and I thought I had the words down. But when we get there, it's quite interesting. But when we get down to it, it was pretty much, all I wanted to pretty much do was just to sing a song for her. It was Marry Me by Train, and just to propose. And it happened.
So the proposal. He came home, he'd just come home from strike, and he told me he had a week before he left. So we hung out Monday, like right when he got home from the airport. And he kind of was mentioning stuff about our future, and it was just like, for me, it was still like, oh, like kind of, it was going to happen, but it's far-fetched, like not anytime soon. And so the next day he saw me was Wednesday, and he texted me. I get out of school like 10:30, and he's like, Zoya, can you meet me? Well, I'm going to come pick you up after, and we'll go hang out. I'm like, okay. So I'm like waiting. He's like, hey, can you come to this other place? I'm like running late. I'm like, okay, that's not a problem. It's like an hour late, I'm like, oh boy. And then so he pulls up in not his usual car, and I'm just like, oh, something's going on. And so we get in the car, and John's usually really, he's like talkative, like you could easily whatever converse with him. But this time he's acting a little funny. He's acting strange, and I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? And I kind of got a hint that something was happening, but definitely didn't think it was a proposal. And so I'm like, I'm not telling him that I kind of know something. So I'm acting strange. I'm just laughing, and he's not totally not himself. So he's like, oh, let's go get something from McDonald's. I'm like, okay. So let's go to McDonald's. So he orders a frappe. We're waiting in the line, and it's legit hasn't even been a minute. He's like, what's taking them so long? And he pulls out of the driveway, out of the drive-through. I'm like, okay, something is going on. And so we walked at this place before at the canal, and we're driving, and I'm like, he's like, let's go walk there. I'm like, okay. I'm like, John, and he's like driving, and he passes it. I'm like, John, you missed a turn. He's like, oh, I did? I'm like, okay, he's stalling. He's doing something. So he turns around, and we come back, and then we start walking, and it's freezing. It's cold out, and he turns me around, and I'm walking backwards. He's like, I have a surprise for you. I'm like, I hate surprises. I can't do surprises. And he's like, no, I want to show you something. I'm like, okay, fine. And then all of a sudden, it's late at night, and I hear people talking. I'm like, John, who is that? He's like, oh, nobody. He covers my ears. He's trying to cover them up. And so anyway, he's like, okay, stand right here and don't turn around until I tell you. And I feel like I stood there for the longest time. I'm freezing. And finally, he's like, okay, turn around. I turn around, and John's sitting behind a piano. I'm standing in a heart full of rose petals, and there's lights everywhere. And strung across from 2 trees were the words, I love you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because he never before said, I love you. And so I'm like, oh, this is going to be the way he says it for the first time. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. And he starts singing, and he's singing. That's all I had in my mind. And then it gets to the chorus where it goes, and he sings, marry me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no, he's going to propose right here, right now. I'm like, this is not happening. I didn't know what to do. I'm like, should I run? Should I book it? But I stood there, and it took forever for the song to finish. He starts walking up to me. I'm already going nuts, and he says some things. I'm sure they were sweet. I don't remember anything except for him getting down on his knee, and I kind of just freaked out, and I hugged him, and he's like, you didn't answer. I'm like, oh, yes. So that's how that all happened.
So here we are, and it's been an interesting last few years, and love definitely is crazy, but I don't know, it's been exciting, and just everybody who's been a part of like this story, thank you so much. And it's been amazing, and thank you to everybody who joined us today in our celebration. And that was just a little piece of the beginning, and we have so much more ahead, and we're just excited for what life is in store for us. And thank you for being a part of our celebration.